morning to Austria. Welcome here from Singapore. My name is Ramin Musavi. I'm the Innovation and Technology Officer here at Advantage Austria in Singapore, or the AT Singapore as it is known back home. I will be your host today and guiding you through our webinar on rail solutions in Asia, where together with my colleagues in Jakarta, Manila, and Kuala Lumpur, we will aim to give you an overview of the trends, developments, upcoming projects in Southeast Asia. We also have the great honor of having with us today Mr. Guntur Setiawan, who is the Vice President of the Indonesian Railway, who will be presenting from Jakarta. Now, with that, without further ado, I would like to hand over to my colleague Sigmund Nemeti in Jakarta, who will introduce the railway sector in Indonesia.
Thank you, Ramin from Singapore. My name is Sigmund Nemeti. I'm the Commercial Counselor at the Austrian Embassy Commercial Section in Jakarta. And with me, I have a special guest today, Mr. Guntur Setiawan, Vice President of Indonesian Railways Business Development. And I would like to start with giving you a few informations about Indonesia. Indonesia is the largest country in Southeast Asia with a population of around 265 million people and consists of more than 17,500 islands. Indonesia is politically and economically a stable country. It is the largest economy in Southeast Asia with average economic growth rates of around 5% per year over the last years and is a member of the G20. So despite some challenges concerning the local market and regulations, Indonesia offers enormous economic potential. Also, the country is rich in natural resources. Those factors have shown the necessity of a functioning and efficient railway network for passenger and freight transport on the main islands. The biggest part of the current railway line was constructed during the Dutch colonial era, which ended more than 70 years ago. This prompted the Indonesian government to develop the Railway Master Plan 2030, bringing massive expansion of rail transport in the future and many possibilities for the import of Austrian know-how. Our expert, Mr. Guntur Setiawan, will tell you more about this plan in the following minutes. Most of the Indonesian railway network is situated on Java Island, where also more than half of the population of Indonesia lives. Here, the system is well developed and all over the island, whereas the rail networks on the other islands, Sumatra, Borneo, Sulawesi, and Papua, are still very limited. Another big part of the railway development plan for Indonesia is the urban mass transport system. The first line of the new MRT in Jakarta was opened in March 2019. More lines will follow within the next years. Other projects that are being realized or planned right now are the LRT in Jakarta, a high-speed railway across Java, airport rail links, and other projects of sorts. In order to hear more details about the upcoming rail infrastructure projects in Indonesia, I would like to hand over to our expert, Mr. Guntur Setiawan, Vice President of PT Kereta Api, which is the Indonesian railway company. Mr. Guntur, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Nemeti, for the introduction. And also thank you for the introduce me and giving us the opportunity to tell you more about this development of Indonesian railway in Indonesia. So we have a limited time, but basically I would like to inform you a little bit about Indonesian railway. So as been introduced by Mr. Nemeti, that Indonesia consists of 5 big islands. But so far, the connection is only in Java Island and Sumatra Island, and short connection now built in Sulawesi. This is the master plan of National Railway 2030. But before that, I would like to let you know that Indonesian Railway is the biggest operator in Indonesia, We are, as the operator, responsible for preparing the rolling stock and operating the train. The responsibility of the government, which is a Ministry of Transportation, they are preparing the track. They build the tracks. Yeah. And there is a plan also from the government, as you see on the red line. Yeah, this is the plan of until 2030 that we will establish the railway connectivity in Indonesia. Yeah, you see in the middle island, this is Kalimantan Island, where the new capital will be built there, move from Jakarta to Kalimantan. Okay, so this is the need of rolling stock, yeah, until 2030 for passengers, freight locomotive, coach, wagon, and metro. Yeah, and the total until 2030, we need about 87,000 of rolling stock in total. Urban transportation is important part of project recently introduced by the Indonesian president. So by 2000 and sorry, this is a major project for Indonesia for transportation sector. Yeah, basically for Makassar Parepare in Sulawesi, and high-speed train Jakarta Surabaya and Jakarta Bandung. Maybe you hear about the connection or building high-speed train from Jakarta to Bandung. Okay, let me start with the high-speed train Jakarta Bandung. Now it's built it's about 140 kilometers. Yeah, by China. We established new GV company. It's called KCIC. Yeah, now the progress is for the building infrastructure is already about 43%. For the land acquisition is already 100% done. Yeah. And there's also a plan to build the connectivity from Jakarta to Surabaya. This is about 750 kilometers. The feasibility study is already done by the government. Yeah, and we are now still on the process of discussion with Japan, with JICA and the government of Japan to build a high-speed train from Jakarta to Surabaya. And this is the need of infrastructure and rolling stock cost until 2030. You can see on the presentation, it's about, in total for infrastructure, this is in US dollar, about 50,000 million US dollar. For the rolling stock, about 35,000 US dollar. And of course, this cost of money will not be provided all by the government. In this case, we need investment. So this is the opportunity for Austria company to get involved on the development of railway in Indonesia. And you see all the fundings, 45% will be covered by the government and 55% from SOE and private sector. This is also important that just recently the president issuing the instruction for us to develop a railway network in the 5 big cities in Jawa. This is Bandung, Jakarta, Semarang, Surabaya, and Makassar in Sulawesi. Okay, this is also important that I have to let you know that there is a 2 big project, two province project in Jawa Timur and East Jawa, and also in Central Jawa. And you see in my presentation here, this is some project of railway that as a focus that we will build, that's government built, not only government, but also SOE and private sector. And you see on the right side, funding source. This is from for the PPP, SOE, and from the national budget. In this Java and Central Java also, but basically there are a lot of opportunity for the Austrian company if would like to participate on development of Indonesia railway in Indonesia. Thank you so much. I think that's all my presentation. I hand it over to Manila office. Thank you so much.
Hello, and Manila is back again. Welcome, and a warm welcome also again from Manila. My name is Christina Stiva. I'm heading the office of Advantage Austria here in Manila, and I just squeezed myself into this this presentation with my colleagues because it's compared to what my colleagues in the other regions and the countries in the other regions already have. The Philippines are a bit farther behind when it comes to development of the railway sector. And on the next slide, I'm going to show you, this is actually it. You know, that's what we have right now. We have 77 kilometers of railway, and we have 221, which this is always up to debate, this number. Let's say it's 200 operational train cars. And as you can see, so far the situation or the rail tracks are mostly concentrated on the area of Metro Manila. And everybody knows, especially government knows, in order to commute correctly, to have a functioning mass transport system, you need to invest in railway. And that's what the Philippines are going to do. And they have, as it's written here already, a very ambitious plan of increasing the tracks, of increasing the fleet, etc. And the tracks should come up to 1,900 kilometers sometime soon. The rolling stock that obviously goes with that is gonna come up to a number of 1,200 in the upcoming years. We are all keeping our fingers very much crossed that this is gonna happen. I will be very short with my presentation, also to give my following colleagues in Singapore and in KL a bit more of time. So I will just basically, you will have to listen very fast, and I will talk also quite fast about the projects that are currently ongoing. You will, anyway, you will get the slides after the presentation, where you can get more details of what is going on, who is financing the lines, who is financing the projects here. But just a short overview of this one. MRT line 7, that is the one that is currently constructed. 51% is already completed. So we are hoping to jump on that line by the end of next year. It's financed by a public-private partnership, a PPP of the San Miguel Corporation. Another line that is currently being built, when MRT was in the north, this line is in the south of Metro Manila, and this is the Cavite extension. It's an extension of an already existing line. This one is built and financed with private-public partnership, but also through Japanese ODA. And this might, in the following slides, I'm not going to mention that all the time, but you will see that a lot of the projects that are going to happen here in the railway sector are financed by the Japanese, by JICA, what the speaker already in Jakarta also mentioned. So that's a big funding source. The other big funding source for projects here in the Philippines is also the ADB, the Asian Development Bank. So apart from these lines that are being built and now created, is the MRT line, the rehabilitation project that is already ongoing, and we feel the effect every single day when commuting. This is a project that is also funded by Japan, by JICA, and should be completed by the end of next year. In that rehabilitation project, it's all about bringing the existing system, the existing tracks, the mechanical systems up to the state of the art. So that's been going on for, or has been going on for the last couple of years already. Another project also in Metro Manila is the LRT line East and West extension. This is a pretty small project. It's just 7 kilometers long. The project cost is also not too high, and it's funded mostly by the Philippine government, with some funding also coming from the ODA. As you can see so far, all the projects that I mentioned that are going on, and here is the west extension of LRT line 2, all the projects that I mentioned so far are going on in Metro Manila. And this is basically, I mean, it's easily explained. Metro Manila is home of 16 to 20 million people with growing population every year, and just simply no functioning mass transportation system. And we also don't have a subway here, and that's why we are very happy about the groundbreaking that happened last year in February, so it's a year ago, for the first Manila subway project. This is also a huge project. You can see the project cost of up to 400 billion Philippine pesos, mostly funded by Japan, Japanese ODA. And you can already see the contractors here, that are Japanese companies that are working on this project that's supposedly being finished by the mid of this decade. And this will constitute, as I said, the first subway that we have, going mostly through the main business districts of Metro Manila. When it comes to outside Manila, Metro Manila itself, then there is one project, or the project itself, that's the North-South Commuter Railway System. And this project is mostly financed by the Asian Development Bank. This project is in different phases. We have one phase that is going up to Clark. Clark is the city that has the second largest international airport here in the Philippines. It's also going to be the first smart city of the Philippines. So one part of this project is going up, especially the first phase. The further phases, there's another one that is planned to go. This one is another one for going further up, and this is the Calamba extension, which means that's the north-south commuter railway that is going down to the south of Luzon Island, which is the main island here in the Philippines. So these are projects that to one degree or the other way on their way already, that have the financing sorted out, where bidding is ongoing, especially with ADB projects. Biddings are ongoing at this moment and are continuously over the next couple of years. There are two projects that I just want to mention briefly, and these are the last ones that I'm going to talk about. These are the two projects that are in the south, in Mindanao. These are financed by China, or supposedly going to be financed by China. It's the first time that in Mindanao, in the south of the Philippines, there's going to be a railway. Anyway, the railway loop in the south, in the Mindanao, should be 820 kilometers. As I said, this is China funded, and we are still in the process of negotiating the funding and loan agreement. So these are the ones that are going to be upcoming in the years ahead. The other ones I mentioned before are already on their way. Anyway, so as I said, that was a really short brief overview of what's going on here in the Philippines. A lot of funding from abroad, a lot of funding from the foreign, from multilateral banks, and a huge commitment from the Philippine government to actually continue that work in the railway sector. Last number that I give you is 98%, and 98% means the budget, this year's budget of 2020 of the Department of Transportation, 98% of that is dedicated to the railway sector here in the Philippines. So that makes about 1.8 billion euros just for this sector here in the Philippines. As I said, quick, fast, easy, and now I'm happy to give the line back to Singapore, to my colleague in Singapore, who will then continue with his presentation on what's going on in Singapore, and all the best from Manila. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina, and welcome back to Singapore, where myself and my colleague Johanna will give you an overview, a very short and quick overview of the railway sector in Singapore.
So, Singapore has one of the most advanced urban rail systems in the world. And the public transportation of Singapore consists of 6 mass rapid transit lines, or MRT for short, 2 light rail transit lines, or LRT for short, and many buses. The first phase of the 6th line, called Thomson East Coast Line, opened in January 2020, and it is supposed to be opened completely by 2024. Additional to these 6 MRT lines, there are already 2 new MRT lines planned, and about this upcoming project I'm going to talk about later. All MRT lines in Singapore are fully automatic and driverless. And in Singapore, you distinguish between high capacity lines and medium capacity lines. The high capacity lines, like for example the North-South line and the East-West line, fit 1,900 passengers. And medium capacity lines like the Downtown Line and the Circle Line have room for 900 passengers. The MRT is the main mode of transportation in Singapore, and over 3 million persons are using the MRT daily. Also, the reliability is very important to Singapore. And in the year 2015, all the MRT lines traveled 133,000 kilometers between delays. And in the year 2019, all the MRT lines finally reached the 1 million kilometer mark. And this means that every MRT line is traveling over 1 million kilometers between delays. Today, the total track length of all MRT lines is about 203 kilometers. And with the addition of the new MRT lines and planned extensions, this will increase to about 360 kilometers by the year 2030.
Right. In Singapore, all public transport is managed by the Land Transport Authority, or LTA for short. And what's special about the LTA is that it is fully integrated and manages all aspects of transportation, not just public transport like rail and bus, but also the roads, the cycle paths, the walkways, the pavements. Everything is managed and owned by the LTA, which allows Singapore to take an integrative and holistic approach to public transport planning. So unlike in other places where maybe if you want to put a bus stop somewhere, you have to liaise with another city authority that manages the pavements and ask for permission, here they can really kind of look at the big picture and optimize on a very large scale. Speaking of large scales, the LTA has a master plan for transportation in place that stretches all the way down to 2040, that rests on 3 key visions. The first is that the transport infrastructure should be improved to such an extent that all journeys between any 2 points in Singapore should take no more than 45 minutes. The second is that transport should be inclusive. So the idea here is to improve infrastructure such as rest spots, reduce barriers, introduce more ramps to make life easier for elderly or disabled people. And the third is to make transport environmentally friendly and safe. So that means that more initiatives are taken to improve road safety, to introduce electric vehicles, to introduce sound barriers, to make sure that basically to build more cycle paths and covered walkways to encourage people to kind of use public transport and get people off the road.
So now I would like to give a short overview about the upcoming rail projects and the planned improvements to rail infrastructure. First of all, the 2 planned MRT lines. The first One is called Cross Island Line, and construction begin is in 2020, and the opening of the first phase is supposed to be in the years 2029, 2030. And this line is going to be the longest MRT line in Singapore with approximately 50 kilometers, and it will consist of 35 stations. And special about this line is that parts of it will be constructed more than 70 meters underground instead of like 20 to 30 meters like the existing MRT lines. And the reason for this is that this line will pass under the nature reserve and a water reservoir. The second planned MRT line is called Jurong Region Line, and this will be the 8th MRT.
So it certainly looks like my colleagues in Singapore facing some technical glitches again. As I said in the beginning, we are in developing countries, most of us, and there will be some problems with the internet all the time. So then I think I'll take over from here and send a lovely good afternoon, good morning, selamat datang from Kuala Lumpur. My name is Diana Hohenberger. I am the key account for the railway industry in Malaysia. And before I start with my outlook on what's on the railway industry, I have to give you a brief overview of the political situation. You might have heard that our current Prime Minister, Tun Dr. Mahathir, resigned on Monday this week amidst the flurry on his potential successor. Now the situation is that a part of the coalition left the coalition, and there's now no majority in the parliament anymore. The king is holding audiences and talking to everyone, discussing options, and we're gonna learn more on Monday next week, so 2nd of March, with the announcement of whether the parliament will be dissolved or whether the king will choose another prime minister. So up until now, it's an interim government here in Malaysia, and that might reflect some of our projects which are probably in limbo now. But first, let me give you a little introduction on the current railway network in Malaysia. As you can see on the left-hand side on the map, this is actually it. This is the state rail operators network. The state railway operator is KTMB. And this is the red dotted line is the so-called main line from the border of Thailand in the north up to the border to Singapore in the south. And this is currently a single rail track, which is being in a rehabilitation phase. I'm coming to that later. And you see the blue dotted line, that's absolutely a single track line, which is not going to be renewed in the near future, but there will be other options. But as you can see also, there's no connection from west to east coast so far, which is going to be changed with this project, which is the East Coast Rail Link, which is currently in a planning phase. The target is to connect the Port Klang on the Straits of Malacca on the west coast with the East Coast Economic Region on the east coast of the peninsula, Malaysia. So what does this mean? The East Coast Economic Region is consisting of the states of Pahang, Terengganu, and Kelantan, and the municipality of Mersing in the state of Johor. And they are going to be there will be different options along this rail link. That is to say, there will be certain logistic hubs and international and industry parks, and so the East Coast Rail Link is not the only project in a more holistic matter. So the status quo of this is there's a public inspection going on currently at the APAT site. My colleagues in Singapore mentioned they have the LTA. Our LTA, our land public transport, is the APAT, and there you can find information on the current alignment of this line. But it's still in the public inspection phase. Coming to a more planned project is in the region of Penang, which is in the north of the peninsula, and one of the most dense and industrial areas of Malaysia. It is traffic-wise pure chaos, and that led to the motto "Move people, not cars" initially. So they opted for a Penang transport master plan, which has by the time evolved to a Penang master plan, now consisting of even reclamation projects. So you see there in the right side, there will be 3 man-made islands in the south of Penang. The Penang Transport Master Plan also includes the construction of diverse industrial parks, monorail, cable cars, water taxis, and so on and so forth. This one is, we are expecting it to start by the second half of this year. So pretty much in a very good planning phase already. Moving on to some more, the reason I was showing you actually the 2 planned projects is because there's the most potential we see for Austrian companies. So that's still everything open. There's of course the main constructors are have been awarded, but still this is actually where we see potential and options for Austrian companies. I'm now coming to more yet to be discussed or decided projects, which, if they are decided to come into place, really will be good options for Austrian companies as well. One of them being the Klang Valley MRT 3, the so-called Circle Line. So currently we have 1 MRT here in Kuala Lumpur and in the greater Kuala Lumpur region. This has been operational since 2017, and currently there's the MR2 in construction, with MRT3 really urgently needed in order to connect all these 2 lines, and also to create an interface to the LRT lines, which are existing, which are yet existing. But we need to wait for the government decision. It was initially said that there should be then a decision by mid-2020. Given the current political situation, we're not so sure anymore, but that's what's the outlook. A project also pretty much in discussion and certainly certain times being postponed by the Malaysian government is the Johor Bahru Singapore so-called RTS link. It's a 4.2 kilometer stretch, and just with the target to ease the situation on the causeway, on the connection between Johor Bahru and Singapore. So it's not yet clear what and how this RTS link could look like. So all options open actually, and yeah, we're awaiting government decisions as to whether or not this will proceed. We're coming to Borneo, to the island of Borneo, and here in particular to the region, to the province of Sarawak. Sarawak has been debating about a light rail system for its capital Kuching for quite a while, and as we have learned, the Austrian ambassador and the commercial councillor went to Sarawak in February and met the chief minister. As we have learned, the LRT plans might now shift a little towards an RLT system, which is an autonomous transit, a wheel-based system, basically. So we don't know yet whether or not this will be implemented, though insiders say it's a little bit unlikely, but we're awaiting any more decisions on that. On a rather side note, because still very much in a beginning, is the Kuala Lumpur Singapore high-speed rail, which has been postponed after the elections in 2018, as to whether or not it makes sense at all, and whether the costs are all right. And so it has been revised several times, and we are now waiting for the decision in May 2020, it was said. But as we know, now with the new situation, we will see. Also, a project which we learned was close to the former Prime Minister's heart, the Putrajaya monorail / LRT. We don't know yet. The monorail has been the beginnings of it have been there since 2007, when you can see in Putrajaya there's a bridge being built for the monorail, but this has never been finished. And now plans obviously go into an LRT system, but this is also to be decided by the government. As I said earlier, we're going back to the Peninsula Malaysia and coming towards the ongoing projects, which might not have the amount of opportunities for companies anymore, but still, just to give you an overview, and because there will be certain smaller options, just to show you quickly what is going on currently. So the as aforementioned electrified double track project, so the whole main line, the 960 kilometers from Padang Pasar near the border of Thailand to Johor Bahru, is currently being rehabilitated, duplicated, and changed into an electrified track line. And that included the construction of 14 stations on the main line. The current project is the current and final project is the Gemas Johor Bahru track, which is 192 kilometers in length, and which will save the traveling time from Johor Bahru to KL once it's finished, from 6 to 3.5 hours. So currently it's the situation that passengers have to switch trains in Gemas in the province of Negeri Sembilan, and this will not be necessary then anymore, which might lead to the government's understanding of whether or not the high speed will be needed, because it would mostly take not the same tracks, but the same route. So that's the basic discussion ongoing, since the electrified double track project is currently ongoing. Part of this electrified double track project, but on a different scale and with different contractors, is the Klang Valley double track project. But the same idea in basic is to have rehabilitation of the existing tracks of the state railway operator KTMB. And one more within the Klang Valley. There's currently ongoing an LRT project, the only LRT which is completely outside of KL, of the municipality of KL. So it goes from Banda Utama in the province of Selangor to Klang, and will ease the traffic in that densely populated area. Also aforementioned already and pretty much completed, because it's 70% completed already, is the Klang Valley MRT 2. Yeah, there is probably the least opportunities for Austrian countries. However, we have another opportunity for you to show us your products and your best practices, which is the showcase, the Austria Showcase Railway Technologies and Urban Transport in June. As some of you will be aware, there's the trade fair Rail Solutions Asia, which is happening for the 21st time this year in Kuala Lumpur. And in the framework of that, there's our office and the office in Singapore organizing a showcase. In Singapore, it will take place on the 23rd of June, and followed by ours here in Kuala Lumpur on the 24th or 25th, yet to be decided, but we tend towards the 24th. This is actually a very important exhibition, as it is the only one in the region to host the Asian Railway Operators Association's annual Congress. So do think about a participation, and let us get in touch whether or not you would like to showcase your company, your best practices there. And with that, I'm actually finished with my presentation, and hope that Ramin from Singapore will get back to us. Wonderful, looks good.
We're back. I do apologize for the delay. It seems like our computer got a fit of stage fright and decided to black out, but we are now back. And I think in the interest of time, we're just going to finish up our bit really, really quickly. Just for your information, you can, in the meantime, also ask questions anytime. Johanna was just telling you about the upcoming railway projects in Singapore, one being the Cross Island Line and the other one being the Jurong Region Line, right? Johanna, do you want to finish telling us about that?
Yes, so the Jurong Region Line is the second planned MRT line in Singapore next to the Cross Island Line. And it will be the 8th MRT line in Singapore, and construction will begin is also like at the Cross Island Line in 2020, and opening of the first phase is supposed to be in 2026. And this line will be 24 kilometers long, and it will consist of 24 stations. And special about this line is that it will be a fully elevated line, and it will connect the Jurong region with 3 branches to the rest of Singapore. And other planned projects regarding the improvements to rail infrastructure are, for example, the extensions of the Downtown Line and the Circle Line. And regarding the Circle Line, although the name suggests otherwise, the Circle Line is still not a circle, but with addition of the 3 new stations by 2025, this line will finally become a complete circle.
Right. So as Johanna was saying, the LTA is continuing to invest into the rail infrastructure, but apart from the kind of big projects like new railways and extensions to existing lines, it is also investing into customer experience, network performance, and maintenance. One of the things that they're currently looking into is actually maintenance using drones, whereby the idea is to automate the inspection process and kind of make it less of a heavy manual inspection that it is at the moment. The question now is, how can you get involved with this if there's an interest from your side to do work in Singapore? Actually, in Singapore, it's really easy and transparent. The government operates a public procurement portal called GBIZ. The website will be listed in the presentation that we'll send around after the webinar. And on this website, any and all public projects are kind of submitted to the public, and anyone can bid for it. This is not just for the LTA, this is for any Singapore government project. Just as an example, some of the projects that are currently tendering are the stations and viaducts for the Jurong Region Line, the design and construction of various tunnels and stations for the extensions to existing lines, as well as a hands-free ticketing solution. So the idea here being that transport and usage of the rail system should become a lot more seamless, so people can kind of tap in and tap out without using their kind of having to take out their phone or their card or their bank card. And with that, we've come to the end of the Singapore bit as well. We don't really have a lot of time left. If you do have questions, I kindly ask you to submit them in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to them. Yes, thank you. My colleagues are now coming back online as well to kind of help answer them. I'm just going to have a look at what we have here. There's a question here for Manila about whether you can talk more about the financing options for projects. So maybe Christina, do you want to take that one?
Of course, thank you very much. As I briefly mentioned during my presentation, a lot of the funding, which I think comes up to almost 40 billion euros, is provided for either by JICA, the Japanese, or by the Japanese Development Agency, or by the Asian Development Bank, which is also very interesting, especially when it comes to the Asian Development Bank for Austrian companies, because Austria is a member of the Asian Development Bank. So Austrian companies can actually participate and bid for projects that are financed by the ADB. So for that, always to keep in mind. Also, something that is, also in favor saying for the ADB is that they have very internationally recognized procurement rules, like with every other development bank. So that is something where companies, especially Austrian companies, certainly should have a look at. And part of the presentation or one that we're going to send out later on are also the links to the ADB procurement database, and in connection also the procurement database of the Philippine government. But I see Jakarta is back, so let's hear from our expert from Jakarta regarding the first question. Thank you.
Yeah, so the question for Mr. Gunther was if he can tell us more about the high-speed rail that is planned on Sumatra.
So the high-speed train, we have two projects in Java. Yeah, as I mentioned before, this is the high-speed project ongoing from Jakarta to Bandung. This is about 140 kilometers. Yeah, the second project is we call it also high-speed train from Jakarta to Surabaya. This is about 750 kilometers. Yeah, the first project, Jakarta to Bandung, is ongoing. The land acquisition is already done. Yeah, and the infrastructure project is about 45% now. It's already done, and this is expected to be operated by 2022. Yeah. But the high-speed train from Jakarta to Bandung is not the main idea. I mean, that is the main project, because this is passing this new land, new area. So the main idea to build the high-speed train Jakarta to Bandung is to build another transit-oriented development, yeah, and also another housings. And a second project from Jakarta to Surabaya, 750 kilometers. This is mainly for the new connection, the option, giving the option to the passengers, they can choose whether they will take this existing train, which is the speed now is maximum 100 km per hour, or they will move to the high-speed train. Yeah. That's
okay.
All.
Thank you, Mr. Gunter. I think we have time for one final question. So there's one here about the public procurement website. So there is one in Singapore, as I mentioned, and the question is about whether such a similar platform exists in the other countries. So maybe we start with Kuala Lumpur. Maybe you want to give us a quick overview of how public procurement works in Malaysia?
Yeah, unfortunately, no, there's no centralized procurement platform. A good information source is always the APAT website. But as for concrete tenders, we have to go to the main constructors or the project owners of dedicated projects. So no, Malaysia.
Okay, maybe Manila. You wanna, Christina? Do you want to give some input on this?
Well, there is, when it comes to government projects, there is a website, a procurement website for all government projects. We always suggest to obviously keep an eye on that, but as probably like everywhere else in the region, to have a partner here locally that knows, has a network, knows people, knows about upcoming projects, that's always priceless. And so I think when you're interested in this country and investing here and doing projects here, it's absolutely necessary to also have a good partner and not just rely on public documents that are being published.
And maybe some final input from Jakarta, Mr. Gunter, Mr. Nemeti.
Yes. As Mr. Gunter has said, there are many projects going on here in Indonesia. Infrastructure development in the railway sector is a focus of the government. There are ample opportunities for us to engage, and please take a look at Indonesia. Thank you.
Perfect. And with that, I think we've come to the end of the webinar. Any questions that we have not answered, we will write down and reply to you by email. In the presentation that we're going to send around, you will also have the contact details of all the people that you had the pleasure of talking to today. Let me also apologize one final time for the technical issues that we have. This is actually the first time that we've tried a webinar with this many officers at the same time cooperating and kind of sharing knowledge. Also, as always, if you have any questions about the respective countries, you can always email us at our email addresses. We have a team of dedicated experts sitting in the respective countries, happy to help you, support you with your market entry, or link you up with relevant contacts. And also, if there are any follow-up questions to the webinar, feel free to email them to us as well. So with that, I would really like to thank you for your time today. Thank you for joining us. And I hope that you have found this webinar informative. So from myself and Johanna here in Singapore and my colleagues in the other offices, we'd like to wish you a happy Thursday. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Feierabend für uns.